Hello everyone and welcome to The Legal Helm. Today I am delighted to be joined by Joshua Lenon, lawyer in residence at Clio, a practice management platform trusted by over 150,000 lawyers across the world. He brings legal scholarship to conversations happening both within Clio and within its customer base. Joshua has worked extensively to educate lawyers on technology's capability to enhance their practice, while also teaching tech companies about the unique needs of the legal system. In this episode of The Legal Helm, I'll be talking to Joshua about Clio's bold evolution from transforming solo and small firm practice management to now stepping confidently into the mid-market legal arena. Joshua, hello and welcome to the show.
Bim, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So for those that may not know, can you tell us what it means to be lawyer in residence at Clio, which is a great title, by the way?
Thank you. Yeah, it's a completely made up title. And actually my role changes from day to day, but I joined Clio well over a decade ago and was actually their first legal hire. And I was brought on board not to help with the legal structure and needs of Clio as a business, but instead with understanding of our customers, understanding of how our product can improve both internally on behalf of our customers and improve our customers themselves. And so I work across many different teams, helping understand the programmatic needs of our customers, the procedural and substantive needs of our customers as they practice law, and act as a voice of the customer internally, raising issues that I think are unique to being a professional service firm that also has professional secrecy obligations. It's a tricky line to walk, being a lawyer, running a law firm, and having both the business and professional aspects of our career, and helping a company like Clio understand that need to balance those two, business and professional obligations, is a large part of my job. So I might be consulting on a new feature and how lawyers might use it and what might be some ethical pitfalls that we need to design around. It might be helping our customer support team answer questions from customers who, quite frankly, cover the gamut of legal issues that are out there. I frequently get questions like, I'm talking with a lawyer who does housing association law. What does that mean, right? And together we figure that out. I work with our marketing team on creating educational material around technology and the practice of law, including our legal trends report, which we're going to be talking about in a little bit. So there's no one job description for a lawyer in residence. It's instead being flexible and being willing to learn from the legal industry as a whole, and being able to stand in on their behalf as we continue to research the intersection of technology and the practice of law.
I love that. It's kind of like you're connecting the dots between the various functions within the business and bringing value at each stage. So that's a really, really nice role to play. And it's great that they have that experience coming from practicing law and then being this legal tech evangelist, which is actually something that I wanted to kind of get into with you, is with like when you kind of think about your personal journey that kind of led you to Clio. I'd love to learn a little bit more about that and how you made that kind of move from practicing law to getting into the legal technology space.
Absolutely. So I graduated from law school back during the Great Recession. So we saw the global financial economy suddenly have this big hiccup. We saw giant investment banks start to collapse. And what we saw was a pullback in the growth of law firms. And so hiring classes were just completely dismissed out of hand, right? We saw layoffs for the first time in well over a decade in the US legal industry. And so coming out of law school, it was probably the worst time to become a lawyer. I'd been clerking with an attorney general at the Missouri level and had made a commitment to my now spouse about where we were going to move post law school. And so I ended up kind of having to create my own career. I hung a shingle. I had to learn all the different things about opening a law firm and providing legal services. I was doing immigration, and there were so many questions that I just could not answer. Like, what's an appropriate price for this type of service, right? Do I charge for consultations? How do I organize my files just so that I can stay on top of them? And I turned to software to help with that. And I was fortunate to discover two different pieces of software that were cloud-based, didn't have a huge startup cost, because every other chunk of legal technology software out there had, quite frankly, enormous startup costs, tens of thousands of dollars. And as a newly graduated solo attorney, that was not an option. One of which happened to be Clio, which I chose purely based on the fact that they were located in Canada, which is where we were spending our time. And it turned out to be a great piece of software that enabled me to organize my files, create invoices that were clear and communicated value to my clients. It allowed me to share documents with them, which is really important for a transactional lawyer, like an immigration lawyer. Like, here is your finished product. But I was also at the same time having conversations with lawyers, legal professionals, legal educators, legal regulators in emerging social media. And those conversations all led me to a single conclusion, which is it's harder to practice law than it needs to be. Never going to be easy. We rely upon lawyers to fill the gaps in our legal system in a way that no other single profession does. And because of that over-reliance on lawyers to just fix the system, it's just harder than it needs to be. And I found that when I was using Clio, it got easier, but there were also room for improvement in Clio. And that was some of the conversation that I was really fortunate to have with the team building Clio. To the point where they just said, we would really love to have you come and join us full time and help keep driving this innovation. And we can change the practice of law for good. So I had bad timing in terms of graduating law school, but good timing in terms of having conversations on social media and helping build a community that has fed Clio's success to this date.
Yeah, I love that. So having the experience of being a client of the product, now that you then have the kind of input to shape going forward is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Were there any moments on that journey when you were a client where you thought this technology is bringing something or one aspect that really transforms the way that I think about being a lawyer?
Yeah, for me, it was the client-facing aspects of the tool. So as a customer of Clio, again, I was able to organize my case files. I was able to be mobile, which was something that was really helpful to me. I was living a cross-border lifestyle and traveling quite a bit, and I could not take a file cabinet with me everywhere. But what I rapidly discovered was clients wanted to handle a good chunk of their legal services electronically. And so Clio had client-facing features. It had a client web portal where clients could log in, they could send secure messages that were encrypted, they could upload documents, I could share documents back with them. And that changed everything for an immigration lawyer, where your clients oftentimes are, quite frankly, on different continents. Having that electronic sharing access and a single point of connection with them was a huge differentiator between myself and any other immigration lawyer out there. And we've continued to build on client-facing technology. That's a good part of why we see success within our law firms. So the client portal has been expanded. You can now actually bring in outside counsel and have them work within your Clio account. We still have a client portal that has web access, but we also have mobile apps that are built specifically for clients of law firms. And so that they can use things like their camera as a document scanner rather than having to track down a fax machine in this day and age. We've even gone so far as to localize the mobile app with different language versions to help expand our customers' reach out into different client bases. And we've built a whole series of payment technology that makes it easier for clients to access and forward legal services. So when you talk about what jumped out as really a game changer to me, it was not that I had access to the software, but that my clients had access to it. And we continue to see that having huge impacts.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And when you think about that kind of journey that you went on as being a practicing lawyer, and some of the like-minded firms that were going through that experience, we can see that there's been obviously like an evolution of how law firms operate over the last couple of decades, as they kind of went through that whole paper transformation to everything being electronic, and that transition. What would you say are the biggest shifts that you're seeing today in terms of how law firms are operating?
So I think we're seeing a re-regulation of the legal services. The United Kingdom with the Legal Services Act of 2007, the launch of alternative business services in 2012, um, Arizona in the United States actually creating their own alternative business services. We're seeing the need for non-lawyer professionals to come into the legal system. And as I mentioned before, we just rely upon lawyers to kind of fill all the gaps when it comes to the legal system. And other industries have diversified a bit more. We see nurses and nurse practitioners in healthcare, for example, to help fill gaps that we normally relied upon doctors to do. And so as we see this shift to technology, we also are seeing shifts in business models behind law firms and how they operate. And so it seems like we might be moving away from law firms, but I actually don't think that's the case. I think what we're doing is instead we're empowering law firms to think differently about how they provide legal services. The idea that you can have clients come and fill out their own paperwork as a part of client intake, right? And then create a review and pass that back to them electronically without them ever having to commute down to your office is a complete game changer in the terms of speed of service and the desirability of clients for legal services. So the electronic shift is I think, empowering lawyers to think differently about how they operate. And we're just getting started in all the different ways to be a lawyer and run a law firm out there.
Do you think that have you seen any regional differences on that front in terms of either the way they approach technology adoption or just general mindset?
Yeah. I mentioned the United Kingdom before. We're definitely seeing a shift in how especially high street firms operate there. Uh, they're less likely to try and go it alone, but yet they're still maintaining their independence. And this is something that I think is really interesting. We're seeing the rise of kind of legal consultancy where a high street firm, they'll have their location and people walking in off the street and hiring them, but then they'll also be partnered with a network of other law firms in a very formal arrangement where marketing, business development, client referrals are starting to pass back and forth. And so we've seen um, this kind of informal network for a long time in the legal industry. It's actually why we have like barristers' chambers in the UK, right? Let's all get together and hang out, and we'll train each other. And now we're seeing the electronic transformation of law not only empower broader networks, not just within my local community, but within my state, within my nation, and different types of law firm support services come out because of that as well. And it's very interesting to see how we're pulling this all together and all the different ways that we're seeing these informal networks become formalized via technology and what we haven't invented yet in that space.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So when you think about some of there's a bunch of different technologies. I think you touched on kind of the client focused technologies, and there's a whole plethora of other solutions being brought to market at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Which from a technology perspective, would you say are actually genuinely transforming the practice of law?
So we've had, I think, three stages that are genuinely transforming the practice of law. The first of which was the cloud web service transformation, where we've gone from law firms either having to maintain everything in paper or actually become their own data centers and run servers from a dusty closet in the back of their office. We've been able to shift to the cloud, right? And that's enabled us to start having distributed law firms, the ability to work from multiple locations. We paired that with the second wave, which is mobile technology. And we've made legal services now accessible, not just from a desktop computer or a laptop, but also from tablets and mobile devices. And it's created this kind of instant demand for legal information and a lot of different ways to reach out to clients and prospective clients. Our third wave, which we're undergoing right now, is artificial intelligence. And I know it's a buzzword right now. Everybody's talking about it. But legal is one of, I think, the primary industries that can and will be transformed by artificial intelligence, especially this generative artificial intelligence like we see with ChatGPT.
Yep, indeed. Some very exciting times ahead in terms of what it can bring to the table. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about some of the recent news with Clio's acquisition of ShareDo. But just generally speaking, I get the sense that Clio's been very, very successful, as we know, in the solo and small law firm segment. But there's a clear shift that we can see in terms of the industry, where there's a shift towards kind of serving that mid-market and mid-sized firm. I wondered, what's prompted that strategic focus, and how are you adapting your offerings to be able to meet some of the unique needs of that segment?
Yeah. Our founders, Jack Newton and Ryan Gavro, part of their initial insight was that the solo and small firm aspect of the legal industry was drastically underserved. Again, that was huge startup costs that I was talking about with my own law firm. That was the same pain point that every other solo was wrestling with. And yet, solo and small firms make up something like 65% of most marketplaces, depending on where you look. And so they knew that cloud computing could reach out to them, overcome some of the barriers to entry, both for legal technology software and for law firms in adopting legal technology. And so you're right. Yeah, solo and small firms were the primary focus of Clio. But there's always been a hunger and a demand for better software, not just by solo and small law firms, but also by law firms of all sizes. And so consistently through Clio's history, we've had larger and larger law firms come directly to us asking if our software would be a good fit for them. And it wasn't so much that we're targeting them, but that nobody is. And so they're looking for that good software fit that will help them manage. And we define mid-sized law firms as 20 plus lawyers, all the way up to about 200 lawyers. It gets a little gray up there at the upper end. But we definitely see that they have unique workflows, unique needs, and unique software management issues that you just don't see in solo and small law firms. And so for the last, number of years, we've tried to be all things to all size law firms. We're building features that we think will help lawyers in mid-sized law firms, as well as lawyers in solo law firms. And it has been, quite frankly, a bit of a struggle, right? Because of the unique differences in how these firms operate. One example is if we take a look at Clio's legal trends report, one of the key performance indicators we measure is utilization rate. How much of a lawyer's day is spent on billable work? And for solo and small law firms, it's a very small amount. We're talking right around 29 to 32% of their day is spent on billable work. If we look at mid-sized law firms, it's 52% of their day on average is spent on billable work. And so there's less need in these mid-sized law firms for lawyers to have to do things like business development, marketing, technology, acquisition, and setup. But things that these smaller firms have to, right? And so as we feel the push-pull of trying to be all things to all lawyers, we just realized that we need to differentiate and look for the type of tools that these larger law firms need, right? And the conversations we had with ShareDo showed us that they had a really good idea of the pain points that these mid to large law firms have when it comes to managing workflows, to assigning work out, not just to another person, but to teams of people. User management when it comes to bringing on whole teams of people at a time to work on projects. They had some really great features that aligned well with the needs of mid to large size law firms and solved some of that struggle that we were having at Clio in trying to build those features in, even though they weren't needed by the rest of our user base. So the acquisition of ShareDo, we feel, is a great chance to accelerate the growth of really good software that is a good fit for a certain class of law firms, while also alleviating that struggle within Clio of trying to serve both large firms and small firms at the same time. We were trying to do both. Now we can do both. And that's very exciting to me.
Yeah, no, definitely very interesting times. So what does that mean in terms of how you look at the Clio, like the Clio broader vision in terms of the roadmap? So does that mean like there's integration happening? Does it mean that they're two separate offerings? Like I'd love to learn a little bit more about how it affects the kind of Clio roadmap.
Yeah, that's a great question. And obviously we're still researching that as well. Right now they're separate products. There are definitely going to be integrations and touch points between them. And there's going to be cross-pollination as well. Like good ideas from one will seed good development in the other. But again, there will be certain features and requirements that are just unique to the different segments of law firms that are out there. And so we are going to try and keep serving those segments separately when appropriate. One of the things that I think is definitely on the roadmap is we're going to see kind of a creation pathway of the solo firm that over the course of, 10 years goes from one lawyer to now a team of lawyers to now part of a really large firm that's successfully growing. I think Clio can now handle that evolution of an individual law firm up and through different types of software. And we're going to make that as seamless as possible.
Fantastic. Oh, good to hear. So you touched on this previously in terms of the Clio legal trends report, which I did want to kind of touch on. That seems to have become like a go-to resource for some really interesting facts and industry stats in the legal industry. I remember reading something recently where I saw something along the lines of mid-sized, smaller law firms using AI in their practice a year ago was something like 19%, and that's jumped up to like 93% this year, which is no surprise, but actually like it's really interesting to see how low it was just a year ago and how quickly things are evolving. And I was interested just to learn from you in terms of what stood out to you the most in the most recent edition.
You got it. A little background on the legal trends report. It's not a white paper like you'll see from other legal technology vendors. And the reason it's not is because Clio has a very unique and singular data source, which is the contributed user information from all of our customers. So again, this is part of the cloud technology wave that I was talking about before. Clio, for contractual and technical reasons, cannot see our customers' files, right? No confidential communications, no documents. But we can see certain usage statistics in Clio. All right. Are lawyers utilizing mobile apps to practice law, right? Are they adapting new features as we turn them on in Clio? That kind of thing, right? Very, very high level. but across 150,000 plus lawyers, that actually adds up to quite a bit of data. And so the legal trends report is able to use this contributed, aggregated, anonymized data to provide insight into the practice of law that just didn't exist, right? When I was starting out and I was trying to figure out like, what is an hourly rate for an immigration lawyer? There was nobody to ask, right? Hopefully I knew a couple people and they had good advice to give me. But now in Clio's legal trends report, I can actually dive down to what is the hourly rate for an immigration lawyer in every state in the US and walk away with, is my rate competitive, right? Am I offering a premium service and should charge more? That's just an example of the insight that Clio is publishing and making available to everybody that never existed before. And you're right, our last two legal trends report actually looked at the use of artificial intelligence in the practice of law. And in 2023, it was 19% were telling us they were using it. And then when we jumped to 2024, it was right around 79% of lawyers are telling us they use it. And then when we look at these mid-sized law firms, 92% are saying they're utilizing AI in the practice of law. And this is where I think it gets really interesting. Amongst the industry as a whole, most of them have like minor adoption. That's what they describe it as, right? We've dipped our toe in it. But when we look at mid-sized law firms, not only have 92% of these law firms brought AI into their technology stack, but close to 40% are saying that they're using it widely, like every day. Lots of people within the firm have access to it and can use it as a part of their duties. And so I think these mid-sized law firms are all in when it comes to adopting artificial intelligence, much more so than we've seen in smaller law firms. There's a bit of risk associated with bringing on generative AI, and that's that it actually reduces the time and labor that might go into a lot of the work product that lawyers generate. And these mid-sized law firms are much more likely to be hourly billers. They're much more likely to have non-lawyer timekeepers that are contributing to the invoices. And what our own internal study has shown is that, especially with those non-lawyers, their tasks are highly automatable when using generative AI, which can lead to a dramatic reduction in recorded time. And so these mid-sized law firms are leaning in to artificial intelligence, but with 70% of their time entry coming from non-lawyer timekeepers, there's a real risk that they're also going to see an attendant drop in tracked revenue if they don't adjust their business model to AI.
Yeah, and I think we're hearing that has a lot of impact in terms of how pricing will work in future as well, right? Because
Mhm.
obviously, with efficiency comes less time. Does that mean that the hourly rate goes up to like the thousands, or what happens in
Yeah.
future? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think definitely raising the hourly rate is something we're going to see reflected in Clio's own track data, because that's the simplest solution. But I do think we're also going to start seeing numbers that clients just balk at. Like, why am I paying $1,000 an hour for this? And so what I think is going to be the long-term solution is what we're calling hybrid billing, where there's going to be a mix of flat fee charges and hourly services on top of that. So you're going to be talking about how you use a trained AI model that is specific to your area of law and your jurisdiction to create like draft one, and there'll be a flat fee for that. But then there'll be hourly work as a professional comes in and provides their independent judgment on top of that. And it's going to be the mix of those two, right? Of flat fee, either per segment or per task. And then hourly billing based upon the expertise and the opinion and editing that I think successful law firms will be navigating in the future.
Do you think that this has an impact in terms of onboarding of junior staff in future? So junior lawyers coming into an organization, no longer having the exposure of like kind of learning the basics, right, to get up to the level that they need to?
Actually, yeah, I think that's probably the big existential risk from my point of view is that I'm seeing a lot of senior lawyers talk about how they're able to look at AI output and provide their expert independent judgment to it because of their years of experience, right? And if we're not providing that same opportunity to develop that experience, we are going to, I think, kind of age out a lot of lawyers without replacements on hand. So I don't have a great solution to this, to be perfectly honest. I think it's going to come back to the Legal Education Academy to build expertise within graduating classes on evaluating. Honestly, I've almost flipped my attitude on how legal education should be. For a long time, I was a proponent of experiential legal education, like get in the legal clinics, get the externships, go out for training contracts. Like that needs to happen. Whereas law schools would always say they're training people to think like a lawyer, and that's their primary focus. And I was like, no, it doesn't teach you how to run a law firm. That doesn't teach you how to write. That doesn't teach you how to handle clients. And now I'm the opposite. I'm like, we need to be training more people to think like lawyers so that they can come out and evaluate this type of generative AI output that needs expert independent judgment to turn it from just statistical gibberish, right, into something that's useful by the client.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and I think the exposure that you get just from being around experience just is priceless, right? Like it's actually really nice to see you working from an office and seeing actual people walking around and doing something.
Yeah,
Even a dog. I think I've spotted a dog as well, which is amazing. I love dog friendly
we are a
offices.
dog-friendly office. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. But that's the kind of place that is the breeding ground for creating talent, right? At the end of the day, because you're kind of listening in on conversations. There's aspects of the day where you may not be there to kind of like physically train on something, but you're hearing things, right? You're hearing conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. There's this organic growth of knowledge that comes from being a part of these environments. And I think we need to work hard to preserve those. I think the guild model of law firms in the past, right, of being this professional class that looks after and regulates and helps train the next generation is going to become even more important as AI becomes further and further adopted.
Indeed, indeed. So just go back to the report. Were there any things in the report that challenged your assumptions or surprised you?
Yes. And so we look at a whole variety of different topics when researching for this report. And again, it's something that we've issued annually since 2016. I've been happy to see improvements in those key performance indicators that we talked about over the course of almost a decade. But there was an area of regression in our last legal trends report. And that was when it came to business development and client onboarding. So back in 2019, we did what we call a secret shopper, where we went out and we did highly targeted client outreach to 500 randomly selected, 1,000 randomly selected law firms. And just received, honestly, the worst customer service, right? No responses from over 60% of the law firms that we reached out to. Poor, uninformative responses from most of them. We ended up actually having to call 500 of them just to get a response. And the majority of the response was nobody answered the phone. So that was 2019. And we thought, surely things are better now, right? We've had, unfortunately, a global pandemic, but a huge adoption of technology within law firms. And that should lead to a better client onboarding experience. And so we, again, unleashed secret shoppers on 500 randomly selected law firms. They weren't all Clio customers. It was just completely random, highly targeted requests for information. And in every metric but one, law firms performed worse in 2024 than they did in 2019. The only thing they improved on was the ones that we reached out to via email and got back to us responded slightly faster. But they were worse at providing information on how to hire that law firm, worse on providing information on what it was like to work with that law firm, right? Do I need to come to the office? Can we communicate via video chat? They were worse on providing estimates or any type of pricing information. It just was disheartening. In fact, of our secret shoppers, 73% said they would not recommend the law firm they reached out to, which is law firms just creating this bad word of mouth for themselves from people who hadn't even hired them yet, right? Much less if they were providing legal services. So a couple of shining points is firms that answer their phone tend to be rated better. Firms that had a chatbot on their website were actually the second highest rated. And so you need to have avenues where people can reach out to you and feel like they're being heard. And so something like 51% of clients we've surveyed said that a chatbot is actually a decent place to start when researching a law firm. But 61% said they wanted to have some type of escalation pathway to talking to a person, right? Like, help me schedule an appointment once we figure out, like, you're the type of law firm that I'm looking for. So yeah, unfortunately, law firms are just not being there for people who are seeking legal services, and we can do better. And technology is there to help us do better. We just have to actually start using it.
Exactly. Embrace it. Embrace
Yeah.
it. Yeah. So one of the things that surprised me was there was a stat around cloud adoption of LPM software, and I think it was something like a very high percentage, like 70+% of smaller firms doing it today and happy to do it. But when you start to move up in the mid-market and mid-sized firms, that percentage drops quite significantly. I found that quite surprising, but I guess that as the firms get bigger, their appetite for risk, and I guess they see that as risk in terms of moving some of their information to the cloud, is it plays a part in it. Are you seeing any shifts in the direction where that's changing, and what kind of things is Clio doing to kind of reassure that kind of segment that actually you're probably better off from a security perspective by moving to the cloud than where you are today?
Yeah, we have several hypotheses on why these larger law firms aren't moving to the cloud or haven't yet, right? Part of it's security, right? And concern about confidentiality. Part of it is just switching costs, right? It's harder to move a large group of people onto a new tool. And so we've actually had to deal with there's a phrase in the tech space, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, FUD, about technology. And we've had to deal with FUD about cloud technology the entire time Clio's been in business. I've had lawyers flat out tell me it's malpractice to store your information in the cloud. And then, carry all of their client files in a briefcase that they leave on the train. And so with no way of recovering them or locking them down. And so it's kind of the pot calling the kettle, unsecure in this instance. But what Clio has done is we've built a security culture internally that has paired itself with the best-in-class technology to create, honestly, the best security dollar for dollar that any law firm can buy. So examples of what we do, every Clio employee undergoes a background check to see their appropriateness for handling any type of technology or confidential information. We then use best-in-class data centers with incredible security measures that are auditable. So it's not just that we see them once, but they're audited on a daily and sometimes hourly basis. We have whole teams that are focused on threat detection. at an individual level. And so if someone's trying to log into your account from Russia, for example, and you are not based there, that's setting off red flags, right? And our team is springing into action to make sure that the account is secure, the customer is notified, right? And that we take all appropriate action with them. And so many more actions. These actions have all been then brought together and audited and verified by third parties, giving us SOC 2 level security authorization. And what that means is we have both the operations and the technology to keep information as secure as possible. Now, there's never a 100% security. I don't think if any vendor tells you they're 100% secure, they are just trying to take your money, to be perfectly honest. But we are constantly evolving to make sure that we are as close to 100% secure as is technically possible. And we're even working with our customers on educating them on where the risk really come from and what features that we can be building and they should be enabling to secure their accounts. For example, multi-factor authentication has been shown to block something like 99% of malicious actions. And yet, we don't see that widely rolled out in legal technology or widely adopted. And so we are constantly evolving our own security features to help with that. Another example of what we've done is, I mentioned our client-facing technology, and what research and technological security has shown is that passwords are just a weak part, right? So many people reuse passwords. And so when it comes to Clio for clients, we're not asking clients to create yet another password, but instead we're using what's called magic link technology, where they go to log in, they provide their email, and a magic link comes to their email that then logs them into the software. So there's not a need for them to have to remember another password or create a risk by reusing another password, the same password that they used with their parking meter app, right? And so between our own internal operations and technology, between our continuing audits and review by third parties, and by education for lawyers and clients themselves, we're helping create a more secure environment for law firms of all sizes.
Yeah, very, very interesting. It's great. It's great to hear the level of investment that goes into just the securing the infrastructure in particular, right? Because I think there does seem to be in some cases a common misconception that actually, if you own the data center and you own the kind of infrastructure sitting within the data center, actually that control mechanism that you just talked about and the auditing piece is often the bit that's overlooked, right? It's like who actually has access to it, and the fact that you've got all of the certifications, etc., to back that up should put minds at ease. So I'm really happy to hear that. In terms of other trends that you spotted in the report, is there anything in there in terms of trends that you think law firms might be overlooking at this point and shouldn't be?
Well, there's always the discussion of payment technology. And what we've seen is that payment technology just enables a flexibility for law firms and for clients that has huge win-win scenarios. And so we've seen that law firms that are utilizing online payment technologies actually tend to get paid twice as fast than firms that are hoping their clients write a check. But it also creates a lot of flexibility that has positive benefits as well. The ability to take deposits in trust, right? So you're holding client accounts in a more direct and easy format that then also programmatically and automatically creates all the different accounting and reporting that you need for that. Actually removes the hassle of that. So it increases a firm's realization rate, how much of their recorded work ends up on an invoice, and their collection rate, because they don't have to worry about funds being available. We actually see that same technology empowers payment plans where clients can pay over time. And what we've seen for firms of all sizes is it's a 40% increase in revenue by having the ability for clients to pay over time, right? And so it creates predictable revenue and predictable cost structures for clients. And so law firms are succeeding when they lean into these types of technology. And then when we look at budgeting for these law firms now, it doesn't become then, can I afford these things? But actually, can I afford not to? When we see the huge return on investment that comes from having things like payment technology, online client intake, client portals, we've actually costed these out. And in the US, it's something like $36,000 in additional revenue per lawyer per year just by turning these features on. And so the trends that we see and continue to track over time are that technology helps law firms succeed. It's just a question of which part of your law firm do you want to pull a lever on and improve today.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. I think that's actually like an amazing way to look at things, because I think a lot of people, when they're thinking about a technology investment, they look at features and functionality and then try and figure out, like, is it worth those features and functionality? But I think you just described it very eloquently, which is there's a specific ROI that you get from some of those features, and quantifying that makes a huge difference in terms of how you see the value of a product, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And for a lot of these softwares out there now, it's almost an instant return. This isn't a Clio software, but one of our customers was talking about how they brought on an AI tool that took a look at their activity per user and found just unrecorded time. And in the first month alone, it was an additional $30,000 in revenue. And so there's a huge benefits to these technologies, and the ROI is just, quite frankly, something law firms just hadn't even imagined before. But now we have the data, and I think the user experience and the expertise to bring this to all law firms.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So just thinking ahead to the future, what does that look like for Clio in particular, in terms of what do you see happening? What's the next big thing for Clio over the next year or so?
Oh, wow. There's so many irons in the fire, to be perfectly honest. We are continuing to refine our own internal artificial intelligence tool we call Clio Duo. We're very highly focused on documents and how artificial intelligence can improve how lawyers work with the documents. So we have tools that actually will summarize documents, will find information and help you use it in drafting for documents. We have a chat interface that helps with communications and making sure that you're recognizing things that are kind of falling through the cracks. So a huge amount of work right now going into to our AI workflow and how it helps lawyers handle their documents. In terms of our own research, we're now trying to find where artificial intelligence is really starting to impact productivity and how law firms are going to be adapting for that. Just again, to bring it back to Legal Trends Report, one of the interesting correlations we found is that firms that were most likely to be widely or universally using artificial intelligence were also most likely to be charging flat fees for their entire service. And so there are firms that have just figured out how to kind of turn on an assembly line. And well, that's not going to be the right fit for every law firm, for every practice area. I think we're going to find more and more evidence of that, of these huge leaps forward in productivity. And we're looking at, can we help identify where those are? And can we help build them on behalf of our customers so that they can like seize the advantages that emerging technology has?
Amazing. Well, looking
Mhm.
forward to seeing how Clio grows in the future. And any final thoughts in terms of our audience who may be kind of considering a practice management move? What
Mhm.
kind of things should they be thinking about in terms of preparation for a successful move to a product like Clio?
Oh, excellent. We're starting to see more and more customers come to us with another practice management software. And so they should be looking at what does their contract say about migration? Is there a time that they need to notify their current provider and make sure that they aren't being unduly uh, renewed into that? But also, what are their export procedures? Unfortunately, there are a lot of legal tech vendors who make it difficult to migrate off their services and don't treat the customer's data as the customers. And I've been disappointed to see that. Lawyers have an ethical obligation to maintain files for like years to sometimes decades into the future. And legal technology vendors need to recognize that duty. So take a look at the contract, take a look at what you can export from that, and set your timeline around those. It's also really good to make sure from a record keeping perspective that you kind of have a very clear line of when you switch over. Usually at a reconciliation point. I've done my reconciliation for the month or the quarter, and now I start, rather than trying to do a reconciliation across two systems at once. When evaluating providers, I think there are two things that you should be looking for. And the first of which is just simple transparency, right? Are they upfront about costs? Are they upfront about the features and what the features do? Are they answering your security questions quickly and easily? We've actually built an entire trust center at Clio where you can take a look at our security documentation. You can take a look at our audits. You can ask questions. And if we don't already have an answer for you in that trust center, right, it immediately goes to our compliance team where they can create one for you, right? And that's the level of transparency that you need. And the second thing that they should be providing is the ability to just try the software, right? No software is going to be the perfect fit for every law firm. You are going to have to try it, right? And so are they offering a free trial? Do they have maybe a month-to-month subscription so that you're not locking yourself into a 3-year contract, right? And so that you really get a chance to kick the tires and make sure it's the right fit for you and your law firm. I think it's very important when it comes to legal technology. But then once you have those things lined up, I know how to get out of my current software. I've got confidence that my due diligence is done on this potential new software. And now I'm really going to give it a good test. Then I think the migration itself is simple. And that's how you should be looking at new practice management.
Thank you. Really good tips there. Really good, insightful tips. So thank you for sharing. So just want to move to a couple of fun wrap-up questions, if I may.
Ooh, speed round.
The first of which being, if you could borrow a Doctor Who's time machine and go back to yourself at 18 years old, what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, if I could hop in the TARDIS and go back to when I was 18, I would actually say spend more time learning technology than I did. Like I was a pretty nerdy kid, but I wasn't an engineer level nerd. And so, yeah, you go and learn more about technology because you're only going to apply those lessons going forward. And get a sonic screwdriver.
Yeah. Yeah, that would save a lot of hassle when you're putting your IKEA cabinets together.
Exactly.
Yes. Secondly, what's your favorite travel destination?
Me. Really been enjoying New York City lately.
Okay.
This is going to sound weird, but they made this change where you can't just pile your garbage out on the street on garbage collection day. And for me, it has transformed the city because now every part of the city is just this wonderful place to stroll with energy and vibrancy and lots of opportunity to interact. As before, where you were kind of dodging the mounds of garbage bags. And so New York City is definitely one of my top choices.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite cities as well. I lived in Philadelphia for 3 years. So my wife and I used to take the Amtrak to New York at the weekends and spend a lot of time there. But I remember that exact challenge. Navigating the garbage cans was a challenge for sure. Thank you for that. Any final closing thoughts for our audience?
I think there's never been a better time to be a lawyer. There's lots of change. There's lots of uncertainty, but those are the places where lawyers thrive, and we're definitely where people come to in times of change and uncertainty. So you get to now decide what type of lawyer you want to be going forward. And that's a freedom that I don't think existed up to this point. So there's never been a better time to be a lawyer. Thank you, Ben. It's been great.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Legal Helm. Thank you as always for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us out.